Hey everybody, welcome back to another film of the week. Hope you guys been enjoying the content of the channel as of late. I am going to challenge myself with this review because there's not a whole lot that I can say about it, and I'm going to try to shoot for something like 10 minutes. So I'm really challenged myself today because I noticed that I can really let myself go when I start talking about something. So I just want to kind of really condense and give my general impressions, in a bite-sized like format. So I'm gonna really challenge myself in this review. But off to get my brother once again at school, and just we'll get back to the regular format here soon. Doing the whole camera setup, the lighting, all that sort of jazz. We'll get to that pretty soon. It's just, I don't know, just been kind of just wanting to take it easy, So. But what certainly isn't an easy viewing, or a really simple view. I mean, it's simple to a certain extent, I guess, how you look at it. It's the film that we're going to discuss today, which is a film called Gerry, which is directed by Gus Van Sant, who you guys would know for his most notable piece being, of course, Good Will Hunting, which was written by Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. They would go on to receive Oscars, and their careers would be just catapulted to a different sphere than previously. They were working with Kevin Smith and other things. Good Will Hunting was their big splash together. And this stars Casey Affleck this time, and Matt Damon returning once again, and both of which Casey Affleck and Matt Damon also are responsible for writing the script. This is, as the title suggests, about a person named Gerry, and it is, at least from how I see it, it is viewed through two different people. Both of the characters that we follow are named Gerry, and what happens is that we have Casey Affleck and Matt Damon, who are in Death Valley, and they decide to go for a hike. And eventually what happens during their hike is that they get lost, and they try to find their way back. And at first seems, just a little, a little uncertain, but then eventually it devolves into more and more concern, to where now they have no idea where they're at, and it slowly becomes an examination of the psychology behind this specific individual, or perhaps was always the intent at the very start. So this is an interesting representation of its ideas. I mean, it's very much a deconstruction of someone's identity and their emotional state of being, and it's meant to be represented through the eyes of one individual, but it is being split into two different voices. So that's why you have Matt Damon and Casey Affleck playing the same in name, but perhaps bearing different personality types, because it's a split, at least to how I see it, of the actual person. In terms of their overall personality, half of which of that personality is gifted to Matt Damon, where the other part is gifted to Casey Affleck. And it seems to me that Casey Affleck is the core of this, and Matt Damon is meant to be an illustration of the other side of his emotional state. But I could be reading it wrong. But the thing about Gerry that's interesting about it is a lot of its lingering sensibilities, which I know that when anyone watching that film would be turned off by it, because it's a film that really, really takes its time and lets shots play out for quite a long time. One of my favorite scenes, actually, in Gerry, incidentally, was one shot of, I believe it was Casey Affleck trying to come down from a rock, and from a big rock top, because they're exploring some of the mountain areas, and Casey Affleck climbs up on one area but has trouble getting down, and Matt Damon is trying to get him to come down, And that, to me, that specific scene sits with me the most because it is an illustration, in my opinion, of the entire film. Because right there, you are seeing the conflict that is taking place mentally within Casey Affleck's psychosis. He has, in one part of him, that is hesitant to jump down, where the other part of him is insisting to jump down and creating all these walls and all these reasonings to not jump and to jump, and eventually jumping at the very end. So and that specific moment is when it became known to me about what the movie was trying to do with having these two playing, essentially the same character, but one being more of the physical element and one of more or less of the mental element. So, or at least, like I said, a split in that characteristic, where one has this and one has the other, but they are the same person, just shaped by the distinction in personality. So like conceptually, it's interesting, and like getting back though to that lingering sensibility, I do echo a lot of what people would say about something like this, in that it is quite tedious. At some points it does feel earnest, like I said with that shot with the rock. It's like I don't mind lingering sensibilities in film as long as it's in service to deepening its subject matter. When it's just there just to be long, or even to some extent a sense of realism. I'm fine with it if it's informative, but when it's just there just to be there and just to be long and just to stretch out, a certain idea, it could actually make its subject feel more thinner and less thick. And in the case of Gerry, that happens sometimes, where it feels as though that we are deepening its subject and we are getting some better understanding of the concept at play. And then at other times, I just feel tuned out because of how long some of these shots are playing. And it's not an isolated incident where it's like a few shots here and there. I misspoke, actually. A large portion of the film is a lot of that sensibility taking shape, where shots just play for a long period of time. There's a shot that I remember of them walking in the desert very, very slowly. There's shots of them, the movie in essence is them just walking around, which also might turn off a lot of people because they probably want more activity to take place in their films. And I didn't take issue with that, just because in essence what the film was trying to do, the whole point of inactivity, the fact that there isn't anything really happening, to some extent feeds into the whole subject of what's going on about psychology and isolated like nature and what that might do to an individual. But I think that the exploration of the themes, the actual just execution, because production wise it's also interesting, just because it's just two people on screen the entire time. There isn't any other voices, there's another this and that. It's literally just Matt Damon and Casey Affleck, because a lot of times when you hear people say that, oh, it's just two people on screen, there's really other people involved. You're just maybe not seeing them, or they're not as involved in the narrative. But this is squarely just two people, and by design, just how the film was crafted. Again, it's basically a three-man effort, where Gus Van Sant is ultimately directing it, and Casey Affleck and Matt Damon, who are also the stars, also wrote the thing. So it has an interesting history, and the concept itself is not without some merit and not without some points of interest and some points of intrigue. Like I said, some of those lingering sensibilities do pay off, and they do have some information to supply. And then there's other times where it just really just stretches it to where it just comes off more thin than thick. I understand ultimately what they're trying to do in it being a study of psychology and a deconstruction of one's psychosis, just really analyzing who this person is. I understand that, but and also like commentary and commenting on isolating circumstances, the sort of effects that might have on an individual. Like, it's not completely mysterious or as ambiguous as it makes it out to be. What makes it questionable, though, is just how long certain things have to play out and how drawn out, really is the phrase for it, certain beats and certain shots just have to be. And it might seem like a nitpick, but it really isn't, when the whole construction of Gerry, and I think that even in an interview they had stated about in Gerry that was deliberate, that they wanted everything to feel stretched and everything wanted to be played out for a certain amount of time within each frame and each sequence. I just don't think that it is as informative as it believes itself to be. And at times it is, and at those points I was interested. And I mean, generally speaking, it's interesting. I mean, by the production of it and just by design, it is interesting. But I can't sit here and say that I was ultimately that I was completely won over by it. There are times where I was just like, okay, and there are other times where I was like, huh, okay, you know. So it's fairly mixed for me, but ultimately I land on a more positive note just because I can appreciate artistically what was trying to be, what was ultimately trying to be attempted, but I think that it didn't land in the end, unfortunately for me. I mean, it didn't land as solidly as it could have been, but I think that there are good points to it. I think the performances are good. When dialogue does play, because there's also good portions in the film where it's fairly quiet, it's interesting. I mean, like, it gives some information in regards to just, again, the personality types, but I feel that this is a film that just needed a little bit more of a, you know, just like, things needed to keep moving. A lot of times we're just sitting, and I understand that might be the point in overall design and overall nature, the overall just point of Gerry. But as an audience, it just feels as though that we're not being told much when we're having to just sit in this sort of in this sphere of like lingeringness and ultimately rather thinness. So I liked it, but I say that very loosely. So yeah, so those are my thoughts on Gerry. I thought it was okay, but interesting. I will give it that. Like I said, I think it's an interesting endeavor. I like that the overall, like, if you were to pitch it to me, I would think that that's very interesting. But seeing how it is made, I take a few issues with just how long things have to be played out and ultimately feel drawn out rather than being important and informative. So yeah, I failed. It was meant to be 10 minutes, but hey, it was. I can't help when I talk. I just when I go. So, but yeah. So those are my thoughts on Gerry. You guys know your thoughts on Gerry, and just generally speaking of Gus Van Sant. I think that's how you say his name. I enjoy Good Will Hunting. I don't love it, but I like it. Interestingly enough, I would probably revisit this film more than I would Good Will Hunting. Even though I would say that Good Will Hunting is probably generally a better film, but there's just something about this film that's interesting, even if I acknowledge it's not great. So, but you guys let me know your thoughts on Gerry and everything Gus Van Sant in the comment section below. And that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in, and until then, I will catch you guys in the next video.